All right, guys, what's up and welcome to Diabetes Talk. I'm your host, Charlie O Connell. We are broadcasting live from the GlucoseZone studio here in New Haven, Connecticut, and I want to thank everyone around the world for joining us. Now, we just had an awesome total body workout for diabetes. I am like literally totally drenched from sweat. Guys, if you haven't joined us yet, check us out. Every time we do Diabetes Talk on YouTube, we have a exercise that precedes it, and I really want to encourage you to join us for that. Okay, so tonight's topic is a very useful topic where we're going to explain what are the top 5 exercises for lowering glucose levels, and what we're going to talk about specifically is how to use exercise as a solution to lower glucose levels. And I'm also going to provide some context and some very practical tips for people with type 1 diabetes who may be having a problem with constant hypoglycemia related to exercise. Okay? Now, as always, guys, we want to answer your questions. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and basically answering them. So let's get right into it. And basically, let's start off with exercises that you can use as a solution to lower glucose levels. And I'm going to talk about something called how to deal with something called postprandial glucose excursions. Okay? Now, what is a postprandial glucose excursion? What a postprandial glucose excursion is a rise in your glucose levels after you eat food. Okay? And exercise can be a very effective solution to dealing and preventing and reducing a postprandial glucose excursion under one very specific scenario. Okay? If you are a person with prediabetes or you are a person with type 2 diabetes and you are taking oral medications only, okay, using exercise as a solution after a meal can be very effective at preventing a spike in your glucose levels. And let's start with the easiest one, okay, and that would be going for a walk, okay. A 30-minute walk after exercise, if you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes and you are not taking insulin, very, very important, and you are not taking insulin, going for a walk can be an incredible solution to dealing with high glucose levels. Now, why is that? Okay, well, walking is actually a total body motion and movement. With every step that you take, you're actually engaging almost every single muscle in your body, right? When you engage your muscles in a continuous motion, okay, that depletes glycogen out of them. And glycogen is what your muscles actually use to provide energy for activity, and glycogen is what glucose becomes when it's stored in your muscles. When you go for a walk, you start to deplete the glycogen out of your muscles, and literally your muscles become open and receptive to glucose in your bloodstream. And your body will actually very effectively shuttle food-derived glucose into those muscles if you are walking and performing a continuous activity. All right, and that methodology has been used for controlling postprandial glucose excursions. It's also been used for controlling weight gain and affecting weight loss. Okay. So generally speaking, walking, okay, or any of the GlucoseZone workouts that we've created that are in level 1 or level 2 are very effective at dealing with postprandial glucose excursions, which is spikes in glucose levels after eating. Now, there is a big caveat to that advice. And what the caveat to that advice is, if you are taking insulin, that is a bad idea. And here is the reason why. Okay? When a person injects insulin, they create something in their body that can cause a hypoglycemic event. And let me explain to you exactly what happens, okay? Insulin does two things in your body. Insulin causes the absorption of glucose into your liver, muscle, and fat tissue, okay? In your liver and your muscle, insulin causes the absorption of glucose and it's turned into glycogen. In your fat tissue, it is converted into a triglyceride, okay? Insulin also simultaneously inhibits fat metabolism. Now I'm going to say that again because it's very important to understand. Almost everybody with diabetes understands the relationship between insulin and glucose. They understand that insulin causes the absorption of glucose. They don't understand the equally important relationship between insulin and fat metabolism, and the fact that insulin inhibits fat metabolism. The reason why that is so important to understand is because activity like walking relies on fat metabolism to meet the energy requirements of the activity. And if you have injected insulin, okay, for a meal, and then you go for a walk immediately after that meal, the presence of that insulin will inhibit your body from metabolizing fat, and what will happen is a crash in your glucose levels, okay? And that's a very dangerous situation. It is an incredibly frustrating situation for many people living with diabetes who have not received that very specific and practical advice. Okay, so if, just to recap, because this is complicated and it's hard to understand, okay, but if you are a person with pre-diabetes and or type 2 diabetes, but you're only taking oral medication, then going for a walk after a meal, fantastic idea. But if you have type 2 diabetes and you're taking insulin, or if you have type 1 diabetes and you're taking insulin, going for a walk immediately after a meal can basically be a recipe for a hypoglycemic event. All right? And that is a very, very practical tip that I want you to understand. Okay? And if you're not understanding it, and by the way, diabetes management is much easier said than done, I want you to talk with your healthcare provider. All right. Now, let's talk about some other exercises that we can use to lower our blood glucose levels. Exercise as a solution, okay, regardless of the meal time, okay? So I'm going to put this in two contexts. Let's start with type 2 diabetes. Let's say that it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you've had a meal at lunchtime and your blood sugar is 200, okay? What are some effective exercises that you can do to lower your blood sugar levels? All right, well, walking is certainly one of them. Hiking, certainly one of them. Biking, okay? Any exercise that is continuous motion and in a heart rate level that is between 50 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. Now, let me explain that because this is very important to understand. I am sure that everybody here who's watching this program has at one point or another heard the term fat burning exercise, okay? And if you go to any gym in America, you'll see on pieces of cardio equipment, there'll be graphs. And the graph will have an XY coordinates. And the vertical will say age, okay? And the Y coordinate, the Y axis, okay, will say heart rate, okay? And it'll be a number. And basically a big line going down in a horizontal way, right, will say fat burning zone. And what that is talking about is when you perform exercise between 50 and 80% of your maximum heart rate, that is when your body is actually naturally designed to utilize fat as a higher percentage of energy ratio. Now, when you do that, okay, and you have diabetes, those are the exercises that will actually most likely cause glucose levels to come down. And the reason why that is because if you have excess insulin in your body, if you have something called insulin resistance, when you perform exercise in a heart rate zone where your body is designed to utilize fat, but you have excess insulin in your body, that will actually cause a very rapid and quick absorption of glucose, okay? So the same reasons why a person with type 1 diabetes needs to be very careful when they do exercise of moderate intensity between heart rate zone of 50 to 80%, those are the same exercises that can be very effective and can be used as a solution, okay, for people with type 2 diabetes. So, and I also want to be very, very clear. Guys, diabetes is very complicated, and one of the things that I try and do with these diabetes talks is I try to provide simple explanations to very complicated things, okay? And sometimes that's very challenging, even for me. If what I am saying to you is not making sense, I really want to encourage you, reach out to our digital coaches or reach out to your healthcare provider to get further clarification, okay? The other thing that I want to make clear is if you're following us in the GLUCOSEZONE, you actually don't have to understand these things because you can trust that we have figured these things out, okay? So if you are looking for an exercise solution to lower your blood glucose levels, okay, you definitely can do GLUCOSEZONE workouts. That's as a blanket statement, okay? But there are other more traditional forms of exercise that you can use, and those are things like hiking. Those are things like biking. Those are things like golfing, okay, without a golf cart, right? Golfing is one of the most effective ways of lowering blood glucose levels. Why is that? It is a long duration of time, right? Even if you play 9 holes of golf, that usually takes 2 hours. And when you play 9 holes of golf, you are slightly at an elevated heart rate and intensity for an extended period of time, okay? And that is the formula for lowering blood glucose levels. Now, why am I breaking that down so much? Okay. The reason why I'm breaking that down so much is so many people living with diabetes make the mistake of exercising too hard when their blood sugar levels are high. And they actually experience the exact opposite effect that they're looking for. Their glucose levels will go up. And here's the reason why that happens, okay? Once your heart rate crosses over 80% of its maximum effort, you change from something called an aerobic state to an anaerobic state. And what anaerobic exercise means is without oxygen, and the form of energy that's provided to actually enable the activity is glycolytic. What glycolytic forms of energy means is that literally your liver will dump sugar into your bloodstream to respond to the strenuous nature of the activity. And here's a simple and easy way to understand why that happens, okay? When you start to walk, okay, and your heart rate elevates slightly, and you start going on for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and your heart rate is beating at a slightly elevated level, that begins a whole signaling process in your body. And the healthy response to that is literally hormonal response that says, start breaking down fat. And your body will begin the process of breaking down fat and converting it into energy to be oxidized. And you use that fat oxidation to meet the energy requirements of an activity. If your heart rate goes too fast, though, a different signal happens. And what the signal is we're going too fast. We don't have enough time to break down fat and oxidize it. So here, have some sugar. Okay? And literally, your liver will dump sugar into your bloodstream so that your muscles can continue to have energy for activity. And that is a very common mistake that people living with diabetes make. They'll test their blood sugar, it'll be higher than they want, then they go work out way too hard, and their blood sugar levels go even higher. And they get very frustrated and they say, why did that happen? Well, the reason why that happened is because you may have stimulated a glycolytic response to exercise. Okay, exercise like biking, exercise like walking, exercise like hiking, anything that's of continuous motion for 20 or more minutes will most likely cause a lowering of glucose levels. All right? All right. Now, we got a couple people on the line right now, so I want to do a big shout out, okay? The first thing I want to do is a big shout out to JM. JM, thank you for joining us for Diabetes Talk. Guys, for everybody that's listening and watching, JM has had a phenomenal experience incorporating GLUCOSEZONE into his diabetes management and basically taking the fight to diabetes like few have ever done it. So JM, it's good to see you here, okay? Deleslin, joining us from Texas. Deleslin was in the workout today. Deleslin, I know that workout was tough because I was sweating like crazy, and I'm proud of you for basically getting it done, okay? And Dottie, joining us from Cleveland. Dottie, it's good to see you, okay? Now, and Lulu is here. Guys, we really have a global audience tonight. It's really exciting. We've got people from California, Georgia, Texas, Algeria, okay? Now, Garza Guzman is in the house, and Garza Guzman has a great question. So he says, so will that affect the A1C? All right. The short answer is yes. If you perform exercise that stimulates your glucose levels to rise and your blood sugar is already high, that will definitely negatively impact your A1C. And we've seen that quite a bit here in the GLUCOSEZONE, where, and I'll use a very specific example, okay? Right when I was first getting started, this was years ago, I had a client who came to me. He was an older gentleman in his late 50s. He had type 2 diabetes. He was taking just one oral medication, and he had an A1C of 7.8. Now, he loved going to the gym, and from a looks perspective, he was very fit. But his A1C was not in a healthy range. So we talked, we went over his exercise routine, and basically he shared with me that every morning he woke up and he did 50 push-ups. Okay? Now, 50 push-ups is a classic example of exercise that will stimulate a glycolytic response. Okay? And it turned out that basically this guy was unknowingly jacking up his blood glucose levels every morning. And he couldn't believe it. He didn't believe that his push-ups were having that effect. So we put it to the test. He came to the GLUCOSEZONE. We tested his blood sugar. He then did 50 push-ups. He tested his blood sugar again, and literally his blood sugar had gone up like 75 points. Okay? Then we had him get on the treadmill. We had him walk, not run, nothing too strenuous. We had him walk for 25 minutes, and when he got off the treadmill, his blood glucose had actually dropped below 100. And basically, he looked at me and said, Charlie, I don't know when was the last time I saw my blood glucose below 100. And I said to him, when was the last time you walked for 25 minutes on a treadmill? And he said, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever walked for 25 minutes on a treadmill. In his case, that little simple switch, and basically what he did was when he woke up, instead of doing 50 push-ups, he basically did 20 to 25 minutes on the treadmill. In 3 months, his A1C went from 7.8 to 6.3. Okay? So this information, which is very practical, okay, is extremely important, and it definitely works. All right, now, I want to do a shout out to JM's mother. Okay? So we got an incredible testimonial here, guys. JM, I appreciate you sharing that your mother wants us to know how much GLUCOSEZONE means to her. Okay? And you know what I want to say? Your son did all the work. Okay? And he should be proud of himself, and you should be proud of him. All we did was basically share the information, the guidance and support that he needed, but I know that JM did the work because that's what this takes, guys. Okay? All right. Now, let me go over here really quickly. Let me do a shout out. We got a couple different people joining us on Facebook. First off, I want to do a shout out to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us. Okay? And Jolynn had a great question about yoga. Okay. So, yoga can potentially definitely be an exercise that can be utilized to lower glucose levels, especially if it's a form of yoga called vinyasa flow. And so a vinyasa yoga is basically yoga movements that are done coordinated with breathing, and the idea is to have continuous movement that's coordinated with a breath in and a breath out. Okay? And that can actually be a very, very effective way of lowering glucose levels. It also, for people with type 1 diabetes, can be very challenging to manage. Okay? And really, ultimately, guys, one thing that we do here in the GLUCOSEZONE is we really differentiate exercise solutions for type 2 diabetes versus exercise with type 1 diabetes. Okay? And if you have type 1 diabetes, I want to encourage you to reach out to us to answer very, very specific questions. Okay? All right. Now, I also want to do a shout out to Marisol, to Frank, and to Elsa Martinez, okay, for joining us on Facebook. Now, getting back to our little list, and again, guys, I appreciate the questions, okay? Top 5 exercises for lowering glucose levels. So we've got walking, we've got hiking. Swimming can be an excellent, excellent exercise for lowering glucose levels. And again, all of these activities that lower glucose levels involve continuous motion for 20 to 30 minutes. Not your heart not pumping too hard, okay? Not overexerting yourself, okay? but basically in a continuous motion. All right? Golf, walking on the golf course, one of the best exercises you can do. All right, now let's talk about some other things that sometimes people have come to associate low glucose levels, all right? And sexual activity is definitely something that can lower blood glucose levels. Now, that depends on two things. Depends on the medications that you are taking, okay? And it also depends on what is going on with your activity, okay? For some people, sexual activity can definitely cause a rapid drop in their glucose levels. And that can be a frustrating experience. That can be an embarrassing experience, okay? It's something that you need to be aware of if basically you are noticing, okay, that during those times you're not feeling right, or basically are essentially feeling like your glucose levels are going up or down, okay? Another one that is a very, very common thing where people experience lowered glucose levels is gardening and doing household chores. In fact, many, many times we hear from people this frustration that, you know, they'll share basically the following scenario. They'll say, you know, I went out to mow the lawn and all of a sudden my blood sugar crashed to 40. Or we'll hear somebody using that example in a positive way. They'll say, you know what, when my blood sugar is high, I go out and I do my gardening and I come back and my blood sugars are in the right place, okay? In both of those cases, exercise that lowers glucose levels all comes back to this same formula of moderate level intensity and activity that is at least 20 to 30 minutes long. Okay? All right. Now, guys, that was a really, really quick 27 minutes. Okay? What I want to actually just close today with is tonight's topic was top 5 exercise for lowering glucose levels. And to recap, things like hiking, walking, swimming, any of the GLUCOSEZONE workouts that we produce, okay, and are specifically designed to improve sensitivity to insulin, and you can count on to lower your glucose levels and use as an exercise solution, okay? Or something like golfing, which is an activity, okay? Those are great examples of exercise solutions for lowering glucose levels. But what I want to encourage you to do is, more than anything else, I want you to become an expert in your own diabetes condition, okay? And what I want to encourage you to do is, I want you to flip the script on your diabetes. There are so many people around the world who feel like diabetes is controlling their life, okay? And I want to help you completely flip that around. I want you to be in control of your diabetes, okay? So if you feel like diabetes is controlling you, if you feel frustrated, if you feel like you're not having success, I really want to encourage you. You can flip that script. You can be in control of your diabetes. And we are here to help you do that, okay? All right. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, that was a fantastic topic. I appreciate all the questions, and I look forward to talking with you on the next Diabetes Talk. Good night.